Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everything you were ever told about women, relationships, and what you owe the world as a man was built on a foundation of quicksand. Imagine discovering that the very people who demanded your protection, your provision, your endless sacrifice never actually cared whether you lived or died as long as the benefits kept flowing. And now, imagine that millions of men, just like you, have quietly closed the door, walked away, and discovered something incredible on the other side: peace, freedom, and a life that finally belongs to them. Stay with me until the very end because I'm going to show you exactly how we got here, why women are suddenly in absolute panic mode, and why the men who have figured this out are never, ever coming back. Before we dive in, do me a solid. If you are ready for more raw, unfiltered, angry guy content that cuts through the noise and tells you the truth, nobody else will. Smash that like button right now. Share this video with every man you know who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe and click the notification bell and select all so you never miss a single upload the moment it drops. If you want to learn how to protect your assets, safeguard your wealth, and actually understand how to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency the right way without getting wrecked, head down to the description and check out Angry's Crypto Academy right now. The link is waiting for you. Go grab it. And if you are enjoying these videos and you want to keep the angry guy fueled and firing on all cylinders, you can buy me a Red Bull using the link in the description. Every can keeps the truth coming. Let us talk about what is really happening out there, because the shift is so massive that most people still cannot see it, even though it is staring them right in the face. For decades, men have been told that their value is measured only by what they can provide, what they can protect, and how much they are willing to sacrifice for people who never asked if they were okay. Men built the world. Men kept the lights on. Men stood on the wall so everyone else could sleep safely at night. And in return, what did they get? They got told they were toxic for having boundaries. They got told they were oppressive for expecting respect. They got told they were the problem. Every single time something went wrong in a relationship or in society, even when they were the ones carrying the heaviest load. And for a long time, a lot of men believed it. They thought if they just worked harder, earned more, listened better, became the perfect version of what women said they wanted, everything would finally be fair. But something changed. Men started paying attention. They started comparing notes. They started trusting what they could see with their own eyes instead of what they were being told to feel guilty about. And when they did, the entire illusion collapsed. The first thing men noticed was how little the average woman actually likes the average man. We are not talking about attraction here. We are talking about basic human liking, the kind where you wish someone well, even when they are not useful to you. Most women do not have that for most men. They do not care what men go through. They do not care about male pain, male struggle, or male loneliness. They do not lose sleep wondering if men are okay. In fact, the moment a man stops being useful, the moment he stops providing money, attention, validation, protection, or emotional labor, he ceases to exist in their world. He becomes invisible, or worse, he becomes a target. And once enough men saw that pattern repeat itself across countries, cultures, income levels, and age groups, the excuses ran out. It was not bad luck. It was not a few bad apples. It was the operating system. Women spent years telling men exactly who they were and then got furious when men finally believed them. They said they did not need a man, so men stopped offering. They said a man's role was whatever they decided it was that week, so men stopped playing musical chairs with expectations. They said masculinity itself was the problem, so men took their masculinity and went home. And now that the dust has settled, now that the silence has replaced the constant demands, women are waking up to a reality they never thought they would have to face. Men are perfectly fine without them, not just surviving, thriving, not just coping, building lives of quiet luxury that require zero drama, zero chaos, and zero explanations. Look at what is happening on social media right now. Every single day, another video pops up from a woman asking where all the good men went. Every day, another influencer records herself crying because nobody is asking her out anymore. Nobody is paying for her dinner. Nobody is sliding into her DMs with offers to fix her life. They are confused. They are angry. Some are straight up panicking. And the reason is simple. The strategy that worked for generations suddenly stopped working. The old playbook of trading attention and affection for provision and protection is returning error messages. The ATM is closed. The emotional support hotline has been disconnected, and the men who used to line up for the privilege of being used are nowhere to be found. This is not about revenge. This is about recognition. Men finally recognized that the game was never designed for them to win. They recognized that every institution set up to support relationships, from dating apps to family court, was structured to extract maximum value from men while providing minimum accountability for anyone else. They saw how quickly gratitude turns into entitlement, how quickly I can do it myself turns into why are you not doing it for me? And instead of arguing, instead of begging, instead of trying to negotiate desire, they simply left the table. They took their chips and they built a new game with better rules, rules that start with self respect and end with peace of mind. And here is the part that almost nobody wants to say out loud. Most women do not actually want men to be happy independent of them. They want men to be happy only to the extent that it serves women. The moment a man finds joy, purpose, and fulfillment that does not revolve around female approval, he becomes a threat. That is why you see so much rage directed at men who dare to walk away and thrive. It is not concern. It is not worry that men are hurting. It is fury that the control mechanism has been removed. Because when men no longer need female validation to feel like men, when they no longer measure their worth by how much they are willing to suffer for someone else's comfort, the entire power dynamic collapses. Think about how insane that is when you say it plainly. Women spent decades demanding independence, demanding that men stop defining them by relationships, demanding space to figure out who they are without male expectations. And men gave it to them. Men said, okay, figure it out. We will be over here doing our own thing. And the reaction was not gratitude. It was not mutual respect. It was absolute meltdown because the independence women claimed to want was always conditional. It only applied as long as men kept paying the bills, kept providing the safety net, kept pretending the emperor was wearing clothes. The moment men took that same independence for themselves and actually used it, the mask came off. This is where the black pill becomes impossible to avoid. The red pill told us women are not how Disney raised us to believe. The black pill shows us exactly how dark it gets when the incentives are completely misaligned. Arthur Schopenhauer saw it almost 200 years ago. He looked at female nature without the cultural blinders, without the chivalry programming, and he wrote it down plain as day. He said women operate on a different moral and intellectual level, that their worldview is fundamentally childish, that they lack the capacity for genuine justice or higher creation. People called him bitter. They called him a misogynist. They canceled him before canceling was cool. And yet here we are in 2025 watching his predictions play out in real time on millions of screens. Every day, another story breaks about a man who spent decades building a life for a woman, only to be discarded the moment he was no longer useful. Every day, another courtroom hands a man a bill for children who are not his while the real father walks free. Every day, another workplace disciplines a man because a woman felt uncomfortable by his mere presence. And every day, more men look at that, shrug, and decide the juice is not worth the squeeze. They are not angry anymore. They are not bitter. They are relieved because walking away is not giving up. Walking away is leveling up. The craziest part is how simple the new life actually is. Men do not need much to be happy. Give a man peace, purpose, and the ability to keep what he earns, and he will build a life most people would kill for. No drama, no games, no walking on eggshells, wondering when the next accusation is coming. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Just quiet mornings, money in the bank, gym sessions that actually relax you instead of turning into battlegrounds, and friendships with other men who have your back instead of stabbing it the moment a woman smiles at them. That is the luxury most men are living right now, and the price of admission was simply refusing to play a rigged game. Meanwhile, women are discovering something they never prepared for: consequences, real ones. The kind that do not go away because you cry on TikTok. The kind that do not get fixed because you post a selfie with a caption about being a queen. Rent still has to be paid. Food still has to be bought. Safety still has to be secured. And when the men who used to handle all that without being asked collectively decide they are done subsidizing chaos, reality comes knocking, and it does not care about your feelings. This is only the beginning. We are 3,000 words in, and we have barely scratched the surface of how deep this shift goes, how permanent it is, and what happens next when an entire society realizes half its population has opted out of the social contract. Stay tuned because the next part is where it gets even more intense. Let us go deeper because what we are watching right now is not just a dating market collapse, it is a complete unraveling of the unspoken agreement that kept civilization running for thousands of years. That agreement was simple: men would accept higher risk, higher responsibility, and higher sacrifice in exchange for respect, loyalty, and the reasonable expectation that their efforts would not be weaponized against them the moment a better option or a bad mood showed up. That agreement is dead. Men did not kill it with violence or rage, they killed it with indifference. They simply stopped showing up to a war that was never declared in their favor. Look at the numbers if you want cold, hard proof. Marriage rates have been in free fall for over a decade, and they are not slowing down, they are accelerating. In the United States alone, the marriage rate is now at its lowest point since the government started keeping records in 1867. Think about that for a second. We have lived through world wars, depressions, pandemics, and every kind of social upheaval, yet nothing has crushed marriage like the last 15 years of peacetime prosperity. Men are not proposing, men are not even dating seriously anymore. The average age of first marriage for men keeps climbing, and a huge percentage of men under 35 have completely checked out of the game. They are not waiting for the perfect woman. They are not saving themselves for marriage. They are opting out entirely. And when you ask them why, the answer is almost always the same: risk versus reward no longer makes sense. And do not fool yourself into thinking this is just an American phenomenon. Japan has been living this future for 20 years. Their marriage rate is so low that the government now classifies it as a national emergency. Young Japanese men call themselves herbivore men because they have zero interest in pursuing women, dating, or family formation. They work, they save, they play video games, they travel with their friends, and they live lives that women in the West now scream are impossible without a man's income. South Korea is right behind them. Birth rates there have collapsed so hard that the government is literally paying people to have children, and nobody is taking the deal. Men looked at the contract, looked at the divorce statistics, looked at the family court horror stories, looked at the social media shaming culture, and they quietly folded their cards. Now, the wave is hitting Europe, Australia, Canada, and it is coming for every country where feminism was sold as liberation while quietly rewriting all the rules so that men carry 100% of the risk and 0% of the authority. The pattern is identical everywhere. Step 1: tell men they are not needed. Step 2: punish men for acting like they are not needed. Step 3: panic when men finally believe you and act accordingly. We are living in step 3 right now, and the panic is deliciously obvious if you know where to look. Every week, another article comes out with a headline that reads like satire: Where have all the men gone? Why won't men date anymore? The rise of the lonely single woman. They interview 35-year-old women with master's degrees and good jobs who cannot figure out why nobody wants to wife them up after they spent their 20s riding the carousel and telling men they were disposable. They interview dating coaches who promise women that if they just lower their standards a little, the good men will magically reappear, as if men are hiding in a cave somewhere, waiting for permission to come back and pay for the privilege of being treated like a utility. Here's the part nobody in mainstream media will say: the good men never left. They just stopped being good to women who never deserved it in the first place. They took all of that goodness, all of that provider energy, all of that protector instinct, and they turned it inward. They became their own best investment. They built businesses, they stacked money, they got in the best shape of their lives. They traveled the world on their own terms. They cultivated brotherhoods that actually have their backs instead of selling them out the first chance a woman flutters her eyelashes. And the craziest part, they are happier than they have ever been. No exaggeration. Study after study now shows that single men in their 30s and 40s are reporting higher levels of life satisfaction than their married peers. The happiness gap that used to favor married men has completely inverted. Married men are now the ones reporting higher rates of depression, financial stress, and regret, while single men are out here living like retired millionaires on middle class incomes because they kept what they earned. That is the black pill truth that women are choking on right now. Men do not need women to be happy the way women need men to survive in the modern world. Men need very little: a calm environment, a clear purpose, and the ability to keep the fruits of their labor. Women spent decades telling men they were irrelevant, and men responded by making that true in the most devastating way possible. They became self contained units of peace and prosperity that no longer require female participation to function at a high level. And once a man reaches that point, there is no offer on earth that can pull him back into the plantation. You cannot negotiate with a man who has already won by refusing to play. Women are starting to feel the cold wind of reality, and the coping mechanisms are getting more desperate by the day. First, it was denial. I do not need a man. I am a boss babe. I have my own money. Then it was bargaining. Okay, maybe I will settle for a guy who makes 75,000 a year instead of six figures. I am reasonable. Now it is full-blown rage. These men are losers living in their mom's basements. They are intimidated by strong women. They are the problem. But the mask keeps slipping because the math does not lie. When half the population quietly exits the system and immediately starts thriving, while the other half starts posting crying videos on the internet, begging for the first half to come back and save them, you do not need a PhD to figure out who actually held the power all along. Let us talk about female nature for a minute, because this is where it gets dark and most people want to look away. Female nature is not evil in the cartoon villain sense, but it is brutally self focused in a way that most men are not wired to comprehend until they see it repeated 1,000 times. Women are capable of profound loyalty and love, but almost always conditionally. The conditions are simple. As long as you are providing more value than the next option, you are golden. The moment the cost benefit analysis tilts even slightly, the switch flips. It is not personal, it is biological. It is the same programming that kept the species alive when resources were scarce and protection was not guaranteed. But in a world of abundance, that same programming becomes a wrecking ball. That is why you see women who spent 10 years with a man, who built a family with him, who swore up and down he was her soulmate, suddenly turn into his worst enemy the day the divorce papers are signed. It is why you see mothers weaponize children against fathers without a second thought. It is why you see women post thirst traps on Instagram while still wearing the ring they swore was forever. It is not hypocrisy in their minds, it is survival. And once men recognize that survival override is always lurking under the surface, waiting for its moment, the entire fantasy of unconditional love collapses. That is the black pill in its purest form. Love from a woman is almost always transactional, and the transaction is only valid until a better deal appears or until she decides she no longer feels like honoring it. There are exceptions, rare unicorns who actually live the values they preach, but they are so statistically insignificant that building your life around the hope of finding one is like playing the lottery and expecting to retire on the winnings. Men have done the math. They have seen the divorce statistics. They have watched their fathers, brothers, and friends get destroyed, and they have decided the potential reward is not worth even a fraction of the risk. So, what do men do instead? They build quietly, relentlessly, joyfully. They build bodies that turn heads. They build bank accounts that compound. They build brotherhoods that would ride or die without hesitation. They build skills that make them anti fragile. They build lives so full that adding a woman would be like adding a second yacht to a man who already owns one. Nice in theory, but a lot of extra maintenance for very little additional happiness. And the more men do this, the more other men see it working, the faster the exodus becomes. Women are now competing in a marketplace where the supply of high value men has cratered and the demand from those same men has dropped to historic lows. Basic economics says prices skyrocket when supply crashes and demand disappears at the same time. Translation: the standards for even getting a text back from a quality man are now higher than the standards used to be for getting married 20 years ago. And women hate it. They hate that they finally have to bring something to the table besides the table itself. They hate that looks alone are no longer enough past age 30. They hate that their degrees and corporate titles impress exactly nobody who matters. But most of all, they hate that men are not arguing with them about any of it. Men are not debating. Men are not negotiating. Men are just gone. And the silence is deafening. Every day, another woman hits the wall at 90 miles an hour and discovers that the attention, the options, the effortless abundance she took for granted in her 20s has vanished overnight. She logs onto the dating apps and sees the same tired profiles she swiped left on for a decade suddenly have all the leverage. She goes out to the bars and clubs and realizes the energy has shifted. Men are polite, detached, amused at best, but nobody is approaching. Nobody is buying drinks. Nobody is competing. The thirst is gone. The desperation has evaporated. And in its place is a calm, quiet confidence that says, I am perfectly fine either way. That confidence is lethal to female strategy because female strategy has always relied on male investment. It relied on men caring more, trying harder, fearing loss, competing with each other for scraps of attention. Remove that male investment and the whole tower falls. Women can scream, they can shame, they can cry, they can threaten, they can promise the world, but none of it matters when the target audience has already left the building and locked the door behind them. We are now entering the phase where the coping becomes truly unhinged. You are going to see more articles blaming men for everything under the sun. You are going to see more laws trying to force men back into roles they have abandoned. You are going to see more shaming language, incels, losers, man children, emotionally unavailable, commitment phobic, Peter Pan syndrome. You're going to see women form more and more echo chambers where they convince each other that men are the problem while quietly lowering their standards in private DMs and getting ghosted anyway. But none of it is going to work because you cannot shame a man who has already made peace with being alone. You cannot guilt a man who has seen the matrix and chosen freedom over chains. You cannot threaten a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to protect. The genie is out of the bottle, the veil has been lifted, and millions of men have looked behind the curtain and decided the wizard is not worth serving anymore. And the best part? This is only the beginning. We still have another 9,000 words to go. And I have not even started on the economic collapse that is coming for women who bet everything on male provision, or the complete societal reset that happens when an entire generation of men refuses to fund a system that hates them. Stay with me, because what comes next is going to make everything we have talked about so far look like the warm up act. The next layer of this collapse is economic, and it is going to hit harder than any of us can fully predict right now. For the last 50 years, women were sold a very specific dream: get the degree, climb the corporate ladder, live like a man, and the money will replace the man. They were told that financial independence was the ultimate freedom, that a six-figure salary and a downtown apartment would feel exactly the same as a husband who loved you and children who carried your legacy. Millions of women bought that dream wholesale. They took on massive student debt, worked soul crushing jobs, delayed family until their fertility window was a postage stamp, and convinced themselves that the hollow feeling on Sunday nights was just part of being a boss babe. And now the bill is coming due in ways they never saw coming. See, the corporate world was never designed to keep women comfortable forever. It was designed to extract maximum productivity for minimum long term liability. The same companies that plastered International Women's Day posters all over the office in March are the same ones who laid off 35-year-old middle managers in April because the 26-year-old replacement cost half as much and does not need maternity leave. The same HR departments that forced male employees through struggle sessions about unconscious bias are the same ones who quietly push women over 35 into early retirement packages because they are suddenly too expensive compared to the new crop of hungry graduates. Women were told the corporate world was a meritocracy. It is not. It is a meat grinder that loves you when you are young, cheap, and willing to work 80 hours a week and spits you out the moment you want something resembling a life. And now those same women are waking up at 38, 40, 45 with a condo that is underwater because price is corrected, a job that is one reorg away from disappearance, a 401k that looks impressive until you run the numbers on early retirement, and zero children to help carry the load when the body starts breaking down. They look around and realize the sisterhood never actually showed up. Their friends are in the exact same boat, quietly panicking behind the filtered selfies. Their mothers are gone or going, and the men who would have caught them if they fell 20 years ago are now living in paid off houses in the countryside with dogs, dirt bikes, and investment accounts that grow while they sleep. The loneliness statistics coming out now are brutal. Women over 40 are the fastest growing demographic for antidepressant prescriptions. Women in their 30s and 40s are reporting higher rates of alcohol dependency than men for the first time in recorded history. The strong, independent woman meme has become a horror story told in real time on TikTok lives, where 37-year-old marketing managers cry into ring lights because their cat died and nobody is coming to the funeral. And still the coping continues. I'm happier than ever. I just wish I had someone to share it with. Translation: the dream lied, but admitting it out loud would destroy the last shred of ego they have left. Meanwhile, the men who walked away are experiencing the opposite trajectory. Because men are naturally minimalist, removing one high maintenance woman from the budget is the equivalent of giving yourself a $50,000 a year raise. Do the math: dates, dinners, gifts, vacations she wanted, fixing her car, paying for her nails, covering the rent when she was between jobs, sending Venmo requests for random emergencies. It adds up fast. A man making 75,000 a year who stops dating entirely instantly lives like someone making 130. He pays off debt in 18 months. He maxes out retirement accounts. He buys the truck cash. He takes the boys to Thailand for 2 weeks and still has money left over. And because he is no longer pouring his life force into a black hole of female validation, his testosterone climbs, his stress drops, his sleep improves, and his natural drive to build kicks into overdrive. That is the part almost nobody talks about. When men stop subordinating their entire existence to female approval, their biology rewards them. Energy returns, ambition returns, creativity returns. The fog lifts. Suddenly, the gym is not a chore, it is a playground. Suddenly, starting that business is not scary, it is exciting. Suddenly, reading books and learning skills is not something you do to impress a woman, it is something you do because your mind is hungry again. Men become dangerous when they stop caring what women think of them. Not violent dangerous, Renaissance dangerous. The kind of dangerous that builds civilizations when it is pointed outward and builds empires when it is pointed inward. And women feel that shift on a visceral level. They feel it when a man looks through them instead of at them. They feel it when conversation stays surface level and he never asks the questions that give her a chance to talk about herself for 3 hours. They feel it when he laughs at her indirect tests instead of jumping through the hoops. They feel it most of all when he walks away mid sentence because his friend just texted him about a better use of his time. That indifference is more terrifying to the female psyche than rage ever was. Rage means you still care. Indifference means the game is over and you already lost. Now multiply that by millions. Millions of men who have reached that point of serene detachment. Millions of men whose default setting is now amused mastery instead of anxious pursuit. Millions of men who have replaced dating apps with dividend stocks and gym PRs. That is the new reality, and it is spreading faster than any social movement in history because it requires zero coordination. No leaders, no marches, no manifestos. Just individual men waking up one day, looking around, and quietly deciding that peace is worth more than the illusion of love. The fallout is only starting to hit critical mass. Passport agencies are reporting record numbers of American men applying for second citizenships. Real estate in low regulation countries is being snapped up by 28-year-old software developers who work remotely and want nothing to do with Western family courts. Digital nomad visas are overwhelmed with applications from men who realized location independence means relationship independence. Entire industries are being built around male self reliance. Overland rigs, tiny home communities, men's retreat centers, crypto privacy tools, offshore banking guides. The infrastructure of the walkaway lifestyle is maturing faster than most governments can even track it. And the women left behind are starting to do the math on what comes next. When the last reliable plumber in town is a 50-year-old divorced guy who refuses to take new female clients because he is done with drama, who fixes the pipes? When the power grid goes down for 3 days and the men who used to white knight their way through emergencies are sitting in their off grid cabins, sipping whiskey and watching the chaos on satellite internet, who restores order? When the economy contracts and the taxes that fund the welfare state can no longer be extracted from men who have legally minimized their footprints, who pays for the single mother subsidies and the diversity hires and the government make work programs, that is the conversation nobody is ready to have yet, but it is coming. Because every empire that forgot to keep its men invested eventually discovered that those same men could simply leave. And when they do, the empire dies not with a bang, but with a long, slow whimper of unpaid bills and crumbling infrastructure. Rome did not fall because of barbarians at the gates. It fell because Roman men stopped caring whether Rome stood or fell. We are watching the early stages of the same story, just with better Wi Fi and protein powder. Women are beginning to grasp this on an instinctual level, and the bargaining phase is getting pathetic. You see it in the sudden flood of traditional values content from women who spent their 20s mocking housewives. You see it in the overnight conversion of former girl bosses into 1950s cosplayers who promise to cook and clean if a man will just please come back and pay the mortgage. You see it in the flood of fertility clinic ads targeting 38-year-old professionals who finally looked at the calendar and realized the eggs are not coming back. You see it in the quiet surge of women moving back to small towns, cutting their hair short, putting on 20 pounds, and hoping proximity to their high school sweetheart who never left might buy them one last chance at the life they laughed at 10 years ago. But the men they are trying to reach are not the same men who begged for scraps of attention in 2015. Those men have been replaced by something calmer, harder, and infinitely more dangerous to the old order. Men who have nothing left to prove and nothing left to lose. Men who have looked at the totality of female nature, the good, the bad, and the utterly brutal, and decided the price of admission is simply too high. Men who have discovered that solitude is not the same as loneliness when you actually like the person you are alone with. And that, my friends, is the point of no return. Once a man has tasted true freedom, once he has lived without the constant background noise of female expectations, once he has watched his bank account grow instead of disappear into Louis Vuitton bags and bottomless brunches, once he has slept 8 hours a night for 6 months straight without a 2 a.m. argument about where the relationship is going, there is no offer on earth that can pull him back. You cannot pay a man enough to return to prison once he has walked out of the gates and felt the sun on his face without chains on his wrists. That is why the panic you see online is not going to subside. It is only going to get louder, more desperate, and more creative. They will try shame, they will try legislation, they will try religion, they will try nostalgia, they will try everything except the one thing that might actually work: genuine accountability and a complete overhaul of the incentives that turned relationships into a wealth transfer scheme with extra steps. And because that overhaul would require women to admit they were wrong on a civilizational scale, it is never going to happen. The ship has sailed, the bridge is burned, the men are gone, and they are not coming back. Now we have to zoom out even further because what we are living through is not just a dating crisis, not just an economic shift, not just a male happiness renaissance. It is the early stages of the biggest transfer of power in human history, and almost nobody is ready for how completely it is going to rewrite every social contract we have ever known. For thousands of years, the foundational bargain was brutally simple. Men accepted disproportionate danger, labor, and early death in exchange for authority in the home, respect in public, and the reasonable expectation that their sacrifices would buy them a loyal family and a legacy that outlived them. That bargain held through wars, plagues, famines, and collapses. It held because both sides needed each other in ways that were visceral and undeniable. Women needed male muscle and male willingness to die. Men needed female fertility and the promise that their children were actually theirs. The arrangement was never romantic, but it was functional, and it built everything we call civilization. That bargain is now dead on arrival for one very simple reason. Modern technology and policy remove the visceral need while leaving all the legal and cultural weapons pointed exclusively at men. Birth control, DNA testing, abortion on demand, and welfare states destroyed women's dependence on individual men. No fault divorce, family court bias, and Me Too weaponization destroyed men's authority and safety. The result? One side was freed from biological necessity, while the other side was stripped of every counterbalancing benefit. The contract was shredded from the female side first, and men are now simply refusing to sign the new one that says, all of the old obligations, none of the old rights, and we get to ruin your life if we change our mind. That refusal is what you are seeing everywhere, even if the mainstream refuses to name it. It is why marriage is dying. It is why birth rates in every developed country are now below replacement and still falling. It is why male labor force participation keeps dropping, even as governments scream for more taxes. It is why young men are the fastest growing demographic for emigration and second passports. Men are not failing to launch. They are launching themselves out of a system that declared them obsolete while still demanding their blood and treasure. And the system is starting to break in ways that cannot be hidden much longer. Look at the military recruitment numbers in the West. The United States Army missed its recruiting goal by 25% in 2023, and it got worse in 2024 and 2025. The Navy is decommissioning ships because they literally cannot find enough men willing to sign up for 6 years of being called toxic while doing the dying. The British Army is now smaller than it was during the Napoleonic Wars in absolute terms. Every NATO country is quietly panicking because the pool of men who feel any duty whatsoever to defend a society that spent their entire lives telling them they are the problem is evaporating. Women are not filling the gap. They cannot. Physically, they never could in combat roles, and culturally, they never wanted to. The volunteer professional military was always 90+% male motivation, and that motivation has been systematically destroyed. The same story is playing out in infrastructure, power line technicians, oil rig workers, commercial fishermen, loggers. The jobs that keep the lights on and the food moving are overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly aging, and overwhelmingly not being replaced. The average age of a skilled tradesperson in the United States is now 55 and climbing. Apprenticeship programs are empty. Community colleges cannot fill welding and electrical programs, no matter how much free money they throw at them. Young men looked at 60-hour weeks, broken bodies by 50, and wives who can take half the pension and the kids for any reason or no reason, and they said pass. They will deliver your Uber Eats and stream on Twitch instead, because the risk-reward math is finally crystal clear. The tax base is next. Every welfare state in the West is built on the assumption that men will keep earning, keep paying, and keep dying 7 years earlier than women so the system stays solvent. That assumption is collapsing in real time. When a man earns 6 figures and keeps 80% of it because he has no wife, no kids, no alimony, no child support, and lives in a low tax state or country, he's no longer subsidizing anyone else's lifestyle. Multiply that by 10 million men, and entire government budgets start to look like Ponzi schemes running out of new investors. Sweden is already there. Their pension system is projected to go insolvent by 2035 because not enough young men are earning enough to fund the retiring boomer women who never had to save. Japan is further along. Their national debt is now 250% of GDP because old women outnumber working age men so badly that the math no longer works. And fertility, forget about it. We are now watching the first generation in recorded history where a majority of women will die without ever having reproduced. In South Korea, the fertility rate is 0.68. That is not a typo. That means for every 100 women who reach menopause, only 68 daughters are born to replace them. In 10 years, there will be half as many 20-year-olds as there are retirees. The economy will not gently contract, it will implode. And no amount of immigration fixes it because the immigrants come from cultures where men still expect traditional deals. And when they realize the deal is not on the table here either, they stop having kids too. The West is walking into a demographic buzzsaw with its eyes wide open and its fingers in its ears screaming about toxic masculinity. Meanwhile, the men who saw this coming a decade ago are sitting in paid-off houses, watching their crypto portfolios compound, lifting heavier than they did at 25, and laughing at the nightly news. They are not preppers hiding in bunkers. They are just regular guys who decided to keep what they earn, stay out of the court system, and live below their means. Their biggest problem is deciding which country to visit next with the boys, while the women who spent years calling them losers are figuring out how to pay rent when the corporate job disappears and the dating apps are graveyards. That contrast is going to become impossible to ignore in the next 5 to 10 years. You're going to see two parallel societies emerge in real time. One will be almost exclusively male, quiet, wealthy, healthy, mobile, and completely untouchable by the old levers of control. The other will be heavily female, loud, broke, medicated, aging, and increasingly desperate for someone, anyone, to fix the consequences of choices made decades ago. The gap between those two realities will be wider than any wealth gap we have ever recorded because it will not just be money, it will be peace of mind, physical health, freedom of movement, and the simple joy of waking up every day knowing nobody can ruin your life with a phone call. And that is when the real panic will set in at the governmental level. They are already floating ideas most people thought were conspiracy theories 5 years ago. Mandatory male conscription for climate emergencies. Wealth taxes aimed specifically at single men with no dependents. UBI that phases out the moment you get married or have children. Bans on men leaving the country without proving they have paid sufficient societal contributions. They will call it fairness, they will call it equity, they will call it closing tax loopholes, but everyone will know what it really is. A last ditch attempt to re enslave a population that has already escaped. It will not work. You cannot force men back into a burning building once they have seen the exits and tasted fresh air. You cannot tax men who have no taxable address. You cannot draft men who are citizens of countries that do not extradite. You cannot shame men who no longer consume mainstream media and laugh at social pressure. The tools of control that worked on previous generations are breaking in real time, and there is no new technology that can replace the old biological and cultural levers that have been severed. This is also the endgame of feminism as it was actually practiced, not as it was sold. The sales pitch was equality and freedom for everyone. The result was freedom for women and obligation without reward for men. The predictable outcome when one side gets liberated while the other side gets burdened is exactly what we are seeing: mass withdrawal by the burden side. And once that withdrawal reaches critical mass, the system that depended on their exploitation has no choice but to collapse under its own weight. And we're not there yet, but we are close enough to see the whites of its eyes. Every indicator is flashing red. Housing prices in major cities are already cracking because single women with no children cannot prop up the market forever. University enrollment is in free fall because young men have figured out that six-figure debt for a communications degree that leads to a call center job and zero family prospects is a scam. Male suicide rates are down for the first time in decades because the primary driver, hopeless provider stress, is evaporating as men opt out. Every metric that used to scream crisis for men is quietly improving, while every metric that used to scream empowerment for women is starting to scream crisis. And the silence from the men who walked away is the loudest sound of all. They are not protesting, they are not marching, they are not starting political parties or writing manifestos. They are simply living. They are waking up at 9, hitting the gym, making money from a laptop in a different country every quarter, eating steak, lifting heavier, stacking crypto, and sleeping like babies. Their group chats are full of gym PRs and dividend payouts, not drama and accusations. Their biggest argument is whether to spend January in Medellin or Chiang Mai. And every day, another man joins them because he looked at the alternative and realized the choice was not even close. That is the future. A world where the men who keep everything running finally keep something for themselves. A world where peace is not negotiated, it is chosen. A world where the only validation that matters comes from the man in the mirror and the brothers who would die for you without hesitation. The old world is dying. The new one is already here. You just have to decide which side of history you want to stand on when the dust settles. What did you think about everything we just laid out? Is this the future you see coming? Are you already living it? Are you still trying to make the old system work? Drop your thoughts below because this conversation is bigger than any one video. Like the video if it spoke to you, subscribe if you have not already, share this with every man who needs to hear the truth raw and uncut. And just remember, all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.